The message came late at night when the house was already quiet and the only sound was the ticking clock above the stove. My phone buzzed once sharp against the wooden table. I picked it up, not expecting anything unusual, maybe a reminder, maybe a weather alert. Instead, it was my son. Just a single line, no greeting, no warmth. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers it only her family." I read it once, then again. The words didn't change, though my eyes kept hoping they would. I sat there with the glow of the screen lighting up my hands, my old hands, the ones that once buttoned his school shirts and tied his shoes. The silence in the kitchen pressed down on me like a weight. My reading glasses slid lower on my nose, as if even they didn't want to face what I was seeing. I had paid for the trip, every ticket, every reservation, every small detail carefully arranged. For months I had planned it, dreaming it would bring us together again. I imagined laughter, stories, my late wife's picture placed on the table during dinner by the beach. Instead, here I was, dismissed in a single sentence. I didn't cry, not right away. Instead, I just stared at the phone until it dimmed and went black, as though it was ashamed of what it had shown me. My son hadn't called, hadn't explained, hadn't even softened the words. It was as if I had become an extra chair at the table, too easy to remove, too easy to forget. The refrigerator hummed softly behind me, and the faint smell of the tea I had brewed earlier still lingered in the air. I wrapped my sweater tighter around myself, though I wasn't cold. No, this was something else, something that reached deeper than skin. I thought about the years, about every birthday candle I lit for him, every soccer game I cheered, every long night I worked so that his life would be easier than mine, and now all of that had been reduced to one cold message. "You're not part of this family anymore." I placed the phone face down on the table. The screen went dark, but the words burned bright in my mind. My heart beat slowly, heavy, each thump reminding me that this wasn't a dream I could wake from. For a long moment I didn't move. I just sat there, surrounded by the shadows of my own kitchen, wondering how something as small as a text could undo a lifetime of love. And in that silence, a thought began to form, not yet clear but sharp enough to sting. If I am no longer part of their family, then who am I to them now? When I first began planning the trip, it wasn't about beaches or palm trees. It was about memory. It was about the promise I made to myself after my wife passed, that one day I'd gather the family again, all of us under the same roof, breathing the same salt air, laughing around the same table. I thought Hawaii would be the perfect place, not just because it was beautiful, but because it was where she and I once went when we were young and foolish and full of dreams. I started saving little by little, like a man hiding away bits of hope. Every week I'd put a few dollars in an old coffee tin I kept in the garage. Sometimes I skipped buying myself new shoes. Sometimes I said no to dinner out. I told myself it was worth it, that one day my children and grandchildren would walk barefoot in the sand where their mother and I once walked. And maybe, just maybe, they'd feel the love that built this family in the first place. On the desk in my den, I kept folders labeled with each of their names. Inside, I tucked away ideas, snorkeling lessons for the kids, a special dinner by the fire pit, matching shirts with the words "Family Forever." I even planned to bring a framed photograph of my wife, her smile caught in a beam of sunlight, so that when we sat down at that table by the ocean, she would be there too. I bought little things in advance too. Travel-sized bottles of sunscreen, bright-colored beach toys, even a set of seashell keychains with the words "Grandpa loves you" printed on them. I wrapped each one carefully and tied them with string. The smell of tape and paper filled my small study as I worked, my old hands fumbling with knots but steady with purpose. It wasn't just about a vacation. It was about showing them what mattered. That family isn't built on money or comfort. It's built on moments, on sitting together, telling stories, letting the kids know who came before them. I thought if I could give them this trip, if I could remind them of their roots, maybe the distance I had started to feel between us would disappear. I imagined my grandson tugging at my sleeve on the beach, asking, "Did Grandma love the ocean too?" And I would tell him, yes, she loved it so much that she once walked through the waves with her shoes still on because she was too busy laughing to take them off. I could already hear his laughter at the story, the way his small hand would clutch mine. That was the dream. Simple, pure, a chance to bring us all back together. But as I packed those small gifts into a bag and set them by the door, another thought came quietly, uninvited. What if they don't see this the way I do? What if all they see is money spent, not love given? It didn't happen all at once. That's the part that still hurts the most. If it had been a single argument, a slammed door, or a cruel word, maybe I could have pointed to the wound and said, "There, that's where it broke." But this was slower, like rust creeping along a chain, eating away bit by bit until one day it snaps. I began to notice the little things. At Thanksgiving, they took a family photo, everyone in matching sweaters Tanya had bought, red with little white trees on the front. Mine was blue. No one had told me about the plan. When I asked if we could take another picture with me in it, my son laughed and said, "Come on, Dad, you're not really into that stuff." I smiled, but inside I felt the sting. I had always been into that stuff because that stuff was family. At Christmas, Tanya hosted at her mother's house. I wasn't asked to bring anything, wasn't asked to help. When I offered, she waved me off with that polite, careful smile of hers. "We've got it handled," she said, as though my presence was just another burden to manage. Later, when she introduced me to one of her friends, she didn't say, "This is my father-in-law." She said, "Nathan's dad is here too," as if I'd wandered in by mistake. And then there were the silences. The phone that used to ring on Sunday evenings grew quiet. The text that once carried little updates, photos of the kids, news about work, slowed to a trickle. When they did come, they felt more like obligations than conversations, short, clipped, functional. I told myself they were just busy, but a voice inside me whispered something I didn't want to hear. "You're being pushed out." The final blow came one evening, just as I was sealing the last bag of souvenirs for the grandkids. I had written their names in careful letters, my hand shaking slightly with age, but steady with love. That's when my phone buzzed, a message from my son. "Dad, don't expect a dime from Mom's will. Tanya and I have already taken care of it. You've done your part. Don't make this harder." I froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I had misread it, that my eyes were playing tricks. But no, the words were there, clear and merciless. They had already decided, without me, without even asking. The bag of souvenirs slipped from my lap onto the floor. I didn't bend down to pick it up. I just sat there, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence again, the faint smell of lavender from the candle I had planned to bring to Hawaii drifting across the room. My son, my own flesh and blood, had spoken to me as though I were nothing more than an obstacle, a name on a document to be crossed out. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, and for the first time in a long while, I asked myself, when did I stop being his father and start being just a wallet? I sat there a long time after reading that message, the phone heavy in my hand. The room felt colder, though the heater was humming softly in the corner. I could smell the faint trace of coffee from the cup I had left half finished on the counter. Everything around me looked the same, but it wasn't, not anymore. At first came the hurt, sharp, like a blade slipping between my ribs. I thought about the nights I stayed up late to finish extra shifts so Nathan could have new shoes for school. I thought about the mornings I carried him on my shoulders to the park, his laughter ringing in my ears. And now all of it seemed to vanish in the shadow of one text. Don't expect a dime. I felt shame too, though I shouldn't have. Shame for believing that my love, my sacrifices, were enough to hold this family together. Shame for imagining that a vacation could fix what had already been unraveling for years. My wife had once told me, "Family is where you're seen." And in that moment, I realized I was invisible. The thought came to me, call him, just call him. Maybe if I heard his voice, maybe if I asked calmly, he would take it back. Maybe he didn't mean it the way it sounded. My hand even hovered over the phone. But another thought, heavier and truer, pulled me back. Why should a father beg for his place in the family he built? The loneliness pressed down on me. The house echoed with it. Every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the clock seemed louder, sharper. I stood up and paced the kitchen, running my hand over the counter I had wiped clean earlier, as if order could quiet the storm inside me. But it couldn't. Then I went to my desk, opened the drawer. Inside was the folder with all the travel documents, all the reservations, all the receipts. My name was on everyone. I had built this dream penny by penny, hour by hour, believing it was for us. But as I looked at those papers, I saw the truth. To them it wasn't ours, it was theirs. Mine was just the signature that made it possible. I opened my laptop. The banking app blinked awake, familiar, waiting. There it was, the travel fund, $21,000, 3 years of sacrifices, 3 years of hope. With one click, I could freeze it, stop it all, take back what they had so easily claimed as theirs. I didn't press the button right away. My finger hovered, trembling slightly, not from age, but from everything pressing against me. Anger, sorrow, betrayal, and strangely clarity. Because in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about whether I would allow myself to be erased. The cursor blinked, patient, steady, and I asked myself, if I let them treat me as nothing more than a wallet, then what does that make me? And what does it teach them about love? The morning of their departure, I sat at my kitchen table with a chipped mug of coffee warming my hands. The sun was just breaking through the curtains, soft light spilling across the counter I had polished the night before. My phone was silent at first. Then it began to buzz. One message, then another, then another. "Dad, we're having trouble at check-in. The card isn't working. Can you check?" 5 minutes later. "They're saying it was declined again. What's going on?" I didn't reply. I placed the phone face down, listening instead to the steady hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of leaves outside the window. The world around me was calm, but I knew that somewhere across town, chaos was beginning to unravel. The call started next. Nathan's voice filled my voicemail, tight with panic. "Dad, please, just call me back. The kids are upset. Tanya's worried. We can't get the car rental confirmed. Just tell me what's happening." I sat back in my chair, my fingers tracing the rim of the coffee mug. For once I felt no rush to explain, no desperate urge to justify myself. They hadn't asked before they erased me from their plans. Why should I answer now, when the silence said more than words ever could? By the time the clock struck 9, the calls were relentless. Every few minutes, one after another. Tanya even tried, her voice falsely sweet but sharp underneath. "We need this fixed. It's not fair to the kids. Don't ruin this, please." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed the truth I had ignored for too long. To them, my role was not father, not grandfather. I was the bank, the sponsor, the invisible hand that gave and gave and gave. And now, when that hand finally closed, they didn't beg for me. They begged for what I provided. I poured another cup of coffee, watched the steam curl upward, vanishing into the morning light. My heart was heavy, yes, but it was also steady. For the first time in years, I felt something like control. The phone buzzed again, Nathan's voice softer this time, almost pleading. "Dad, if this is about what we said, look, maybe we messed up, but we can talk when we get back. Just unlock the account, okay? Please." I leaned back, let his words hang in the air, and realized something I should have seen long ago. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted convenience. They didn't want to face what they'd done. They wanted me to fund their escape from it. And as I listened to the phone fall silent again, I asked myself, if love only counts when it's paid for, was it ever really love at all? After the calls stopped and the house grew quiet again, I sat in my old armchair, the one by the window where the afternoon light always falls just right. The silence felt different now, not heavy with shame or grief, but open, like the pause before a song begins. I stared at the folder of travel documents on my lap, the bold print of my name reminding me of something I had almost forgotten. It was my trip, my dream, my sacrifice. I closed the folder and opened my notebook instead, the one with my wife's handwriting still scrawled across the first page. I flipped to a blank sheet and began to write a new list, not of reservations, not of itineraries for people who saw me as invisible, but of names. Names of those who had once given me kindness without asking for anything in return. I thought of Paul, my neighbor, who brought me soup last winter when the flu kept me in bed for days. I thought of Leonard, an old friend from church, who still sends me a Christmas card every year with shaky handwriting but never forgets. I thought of Mr. Jenkins, the retired teacher down the street who spends most evenings alone on his porch, watching the world go by with no one to join him. Their faces came to me one by one, and with each name, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years, purpose. So I picked up the phone, not to call Nathan, but to call them. One by one, I reached out. There was hesitation in their voices at first, surprise, even disbelief. "You want to take me?" they asked, as though the very idea that someone would choose them was too foreign to believe. "Yes," I told each of them, "because you matter, because you deserve it." The following weeks were filled with a different kind of planning. I booked a small lodge by the lake. Not far, but far enough to feel like an escape. I arranged for dinners where no one would sit in silence, feeling like an outsider. I made sure every room had fresh flowers, because my wife always said a home isn't complete without them. And when the day came, we went. Not as family by blood, but as family by choice. I'll never forget the sight of them gathered around the long wooden table that first night. The smell of roasted chicken filled the room, the sound of clinking glasses mixed with laughter that rolled easily, naturally. No one was performing, no one was competing. We were simply there, present, seen. After dinner I lit a candle, lavender, the same kind my wife loved. I placed her picture in the center of the table, her smile shining softly in the glow. For a moment the room grew quiet. Then Leonard raised his glass and said, "To those who are gone and to those who remain, May we never forget either. I felt the sting of tears in my eyes, but this time they weren't from sorrow. They were from gratitude. Gratitude for the reminder that family is not just who you're born to. It's who chooses to walk beside you when everyone else turns away. And as the candle burned low, I realized something. I hadn't lost everything. I had found something new, something stronger. But in that glow, another question whispered at the back of my mind. If I could rebuild my family out of strangers, then what does that say about the ones who left me behind? The last night by the lake, I sat alone for a while on the porch, listening to the water lapping softly against the shore. The air carried the faint scent of pine, cool and sharp, and somewhere in the distance an owl called into the night. Behind me, through the window, I could still hear laughter, the gentle, unforced kind that rises when people feel safe to simply be themselves. I looked at the candle on the table, now just a stub of wax, its flame flickering low but steady. My wife's picture glowed faintly in that light, her smile unchanged, her presence still strong. For years I thought my silence meant defeat, that not arguing, not demanding, not begging for a place at the table made me weak. But I see it differently now. Sometimes silence is the loudest reply. Sometimes it's the only reply strong enough to be heard. I wasn't left behind. No, I simply found the ones walking my way. And if you're listening to this, wondering whether your story matters, let me tell you, it does. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are more than the role others try to confine you to. Because sometimes the family you lose makes room for the family you choose. And in that choice, you may just discover that your story isn't ending. It's only just beginning.